Port Horizon project, funded by Heritage Lottery, is based with Unity 101 FM in the heart of Southampton's minority communities. And what we want to do through this project, using digital narratives, is help you understand more about those communities, their experience, and why it's relevant to this city and this nation. The first of these is China. China was officially established in 1912, and I should say it was only briefly a unified nation. That was in the 1920s under Chiang Kai-Shek. But there was constant war with communists internally and externally, and with Japan. Now, the picture you can see is of Ko Chung. Ko Chung was a merchant seaman. The picture comes from the unique collection in Southampton at the Archives. Now, Guangzhou, we might know it as Canton, was the first open port in China. That means it was open to the world and other nationalities, and was a massive trading centre. It was also in open revolt against the Qing dynasty and later others. But it might be that Ko Chung left because in 1895 the Third Plague killed over 60,000 people. He would have been about 18 and a half then. As you can see, the Guangzhou comes from a derivation of Portuguese Cantao or Cuido de Cantao. And we still use that word Canton. We use it to describe a dialect, for example. During World War II, Guangzhou suffered greatly from Japanese occupation. The worst of that being the Imperial Japanese Army's Unit 731, which conducted bacterial research in the city, and in modern terms we would call it war crimes. Those were biological and chemical warfare research, and at least 250,000 people died during those experiments. Academics talk about the Chinese and the Russians, but they should never ignore the fact that Koreans and Mongolians also died. Guangzhou was one of the places that the Communist Army, the People's Liberation Army, took to establish itself as the new government of China. Now, during World War I, in Europe, Guangzhou continued to be a hotbed of revolt and rebellion, and was for a short time under the leadership of Sun Yat-sen. And Sun Yat-sen reached an amazing agreement. He borrowed £2 million from the German Empire, which made him an ally with Germany, and the notion was this would help him fund his army and navy. But having borrowed the money from them, less than 6 weeks later, he declared war on them and became an ally of Britain and its allies. Now, we know that Hong Kong was a British territory, and many of the merchant seamen of Chinese descent that served on the merchant navy were from British Hong Kong, and many of those would have served, therefore, as British, and over time would have been more linked to this nation than to China itself. Those arguments continue today within Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong was a crown colony and was later in 1981 designated a British dependent territory. But even though there was an agreement with China that upon the exploration of the lease in 1997, renegotiation was automatic, Britain transferred sovereignty of Hong Kong to China and did not seek to renegotiate the lease. Another city is Fuzhou, and Fuzhou once again suffered dramatically during World War II and was under the control of the Japanese until it surrendered in September 1945. Shanghai has always been a significant and important city and is now the largest populated city in the world. And certainly during the 1920s, it also was a massive migrant city, taking in refugees from Soviet Union, Jews, Russian Jews and White Russians, and later other nationalities, including those from Britain, went and resided in Shanghai. Shanghai was also a centre for the opium trade and was part of the Opium Wars, which Britain won and opened 5 major ports. So Britain won the war to control opium. Now, after 1949, most foreign firms left Shanghai. That had been one of their international centres. But on the victory of the People's Liberation Army, when they took control of Shanghai and of China, the firms decided to divest themselves of their economic strength and assets in China due to the communist victory. Now these images, the images and the pictures you've seen, are drawn from the Siemens Identity Cards collection in Southampton Archive. That collection is entirely unique. It's only held in the physical form here in Southampton, and we really recommend that you have a look at it. Nowhere else in the world will you find those cards. Those cards contain much personal information about the merchant seaman. There's about 1.25 million of the cards, and as you can see, they show everything from profession, and Lu Chin in this case is a fireman. That means he was a stoker, effectively, on the steamships. A massively hard job, terribly hard job, with a lifespan, I'd say, of around 45 years old. But these identity cards, the other side of them, would in many cases feature a picture of the person in question, plus a list of numbers, and those numbers represent the ships that that person has been a crew member on. Hope this has helped. And as I say, this is part of Port Horizon Project. There will be more information shared as we proceed along our 18-month project.